Hey everyone, I'm Jason Verlinde, the publisher of the Fretboard Journal, and thank you for watching the latest installment of our monthly series, Fretboard Journal Live. Got to give a shout out to Martin Guitars at martinguitar.com. Got to thank them for sponsoring this episode and the prior episodes. Let them know that you've been enjoying this series, and hopefully we can keep them coming. This month we are talking to Blake Mills. Blake, thank you so much for being here.
Total pleasure.
Now, Blake, I gotta ask you, we've done some stuff with you in the past. You put out Break Mirrors back in 2010, and then you kind of went quiet, but you were really busy. You didn't tour, you didn't have a record out. Talk to me about that. You've kind of become known as this major deal producer session guy. At least I think you have been.
Thanks. Well, the solo record came out, like you said, in 2010, and I was doing a lot of session work at the time, and still do, and still love doing that. And the solo record was something that I sort of was experimenting with, and spending so much time in the studio, started to become fascinated with recording and things that you could do. Spending a lot of time working with songwriters, I became fascinated with songwriting and the pursuit of quality songwriting. Singers, it was just it was like this free place to experiment with things that were sort of a part of the daily ritual already, and that was just the perfect environment to do that, to make a solo record. And a friend of mine lent me his house. He was out of town, and we made it in his living room. I played a lot of the stuff on the first record myself, and had some friends help me, and Stuart Johnson played drums on that record, and he's playing drums now with me again in the band that I'm touring with currently. So it was just a very kind of homegrown affair. And after the record was made and completed, I felt like I had kind of gotten what I set out to do. I'd gotten that out of it. I'd gotten that out of the experience. So I didn't have any ambition to go around the country and play very revealing personal songs for people that I didn't know. And the few shows that I did do were opening sets for bands that I was playing in, or artists that I was backing up, and that was a blast because you got to play in incredible venues and be relatively unknown, and that's rare. But it was also a little unnerving because you're playing for an audience that isn't there to see you, and if you are a natural entertainer or an energetic songwriter or rock and roll band, or just have some instrument that projects to the back of the room, it's great because you can win them over. But if you write melancholy, downtrodden numbers, and you have a voice like mine, it's more of an uphill struggle sometimes. So the live touring thing was also not something that I figured was going to be part of the daily routine. I've in the last 5 years, spent a lot of time, like you said, in the studio, and still feel most comfortable, most at home there.
Well, I know a lot of folks watching probably haven't heard you before. You're still kind of new onto the scene for most Fretboard Journal readers, I imagine. Can we hear a tune?
Yeah, I would love to play one.
And this is going to be from your new record?
Yeah, all the stuff that I'm going to play is going to be from the new record, which is called Heigh Ho.
And we will be asking you about this gear too, because this is interesting.
Absolutely. Maybe YouTube could put just a little more. Okay. This is the first song on Heigh Ho called If I'm Unworthy.
What have I got to lose? Oh, if I'm unworthy of the power I hold over you. This line of thinking, the wonders it can induce. I'm twisted in my sheets now. Look what your love can do. And what if I'm unworthy of the power I hold over you? Time before was wasted. But with you, no, life is not long enough. I'll wrap you in my arms, baby, and I hope they'll be strong enough. Time before was wasted. With you, life's just not long enough. I'll wrap you in my arms, babe. See if they're strong enough. What if I'm unworthy of the power I hold over you? What if I'm unworthy of the power I hold over you? What if I'm unworthy of the power I hold?
Crazy.
Yeah, it's it's fun, but it's a hard one to start with at the top of the day.
I think you did a good job with it. I wouldn't be too worried about it.
Good.
You know, you bring. I'm kind of left speechless hearing you play because you bring so much to the instrument, and you know, the guitar is so integral to the song. And I know you have a really kind of wild background as a kid. And when we interviewed you, I should say you are going to be in the Fretboard Journal 34 coming up. 32 out now, 34 coming soon. When we talked, you mentioned that when you were 10 years old and like really into rock, playing guitar like a lot of kids were, your dad got you into the NAMM show.
Yes, he did.
And tell everybody that story because it's pretty wild.
Well, a few things happened at that NAMM show. I saw Eddie Van Halen play.
Okay.
I saw George Clinton play, and I met Bob Brosman. Mm-hmm. And at that age, I remember having a lot of varied tastes in music, but not a confident sense of self enough to not try to compartmentalize them. Mm-hmm. So there were different projects, and like a band that I was in, that I would get the sort of fascination with rock and roll music out in, and then there was the world music side, but they never really played together. Mm-hmm. And for some reason I just felt, I don't know if it was embarrassed or didn't understand the sort of universal ness of how music can, you know, integrate with you know, one genre and another, and how wonderful that can be. It just didn't. I hadn't heard anybody do that. You know, everything, all of those examples and those influences and those people that I was listening to were like the quintessential, you know, alt rock, grunge, slide guitar. Yeah. It was just kind of the sort of like the table of elements in a way. Everything was very pure in its natural state. And then since then, there have been a lot of breakthroughs, things that people have turned me on to, and players and musicians, writers, and restaurants, you know, that combine food. You know, just there are more examples now where it's easier to see, like, you know, it can totally go together, and it's actually quite enjoyable when it does, you know, especially 2014 when a lot of this music that we're talking about has been around for, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, that one, you know, getting back to the NAMM show thing, it was interesting to have that all occur simultaneously.
I mean, the fact that you were 10 and, you know, jazzed about, you ended up taking lessons from Brosman and kind of like schlepping from Malibu to Santa Cruz a bunch.
Yeah.
The fact that at that age, I mean, that sort of reminds me of when I interviewed Ry Cooder, and he was talking about taking the bus to go buy folk records in downtown LA. Like, what, did you just have a great upbringing with like an amazing stereo at home, or what was going on?
Well, there was definitely a lot of music in the house. Both my parents are big music lovers, but my most vivid memory with Bob Brosman's records, were more of a sort of the way that I listen to a lot of music now, which is like headphones and kind of tuning out the rest of the day, and devoting my brain to what I'm listening to. So it was kind of a private experience listening to music at that age, which I don't know if that's generally the experience that most teenagers have. I think music plays a large social role in a lot of young people's lives. Sure. But for me, it was always more of a personal role, and something that I really enjoyed the one-on-one connection with, you know. And I would go to sleep listening to Fillmore East, Allman Brothers, Ocean Blues, the Jelly Musa Jawara record that Bob made with the West African influences, and just all kinds of stuff. A lot of Middle Eastern stuff. An Ali Akbar Khan compilation that I got when I was young. Nina Simone was a devastating discovery, and still a huge source of purity for me that I go back to and draw from constantly. So yeah, I mean, I guess I've forgotten the question, but I definitely listen on a one-on-one level, and I think it's now permeated to the way that we're trying to present this new record with the live experience. We've asked the venues that we're playing at if they would close the bar and put seats out, and some of these rooms that's unorthodox for, but they've all been really accommodating, and I don't know if that's the way that everybody expects to go see a live concert, but that's how I would want to go and see it. That's how I would want to ingest this music in a live setting. So, by God, that's the way it's going to be.
And how many shows are you into at first?
I think we're committed to 14.
Yeah.
And then we go over to the UK and do
a
few things over there. So it's small.
Yeah.
It's small. I mean, I my touring appetite now has grown very small, and especially when I have to sing. I'm not used to singing that much. The first 4 shows were like back to back, and those were on the heels of like 5 days of rehearsal. So I was hitting up all of my friends, going, "What do you do? What is the secret? You know, what's the what special humidifier? What tea?" And all they said was, "Don't talk before a show." So here we are.
What we're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Before we hear another one, you know, you've been getting a lot of acclaim as a producer, and you know, as a just a listener, you know, you see somebody's name producing a record, you're kind of always wondering, like, what did they actually do here?
Yeah.
But then when I listen to your record, the new one, which sounds amazing,
Thank you.
You know, it becomes very clear of like, wow, he's created this very layered record. At least I view it as that, where there's just like this incredible range of both guitar sounds and vocal sounds. You've got Don Was on it. You've got incredible players on it, John Bryan, Jim Keltner. You know what? I'm curious. Having a budget, being on a real label, you're on Verve, like being a total music head and a producer. What records were inspiring you when you were thinking about your big record project? Were there sounds and formulas and engineering techniques where you're like, I gotta try this?
Well, the opportunity to make a record with Jim Keltner was something that influenced a lot of the sound of the record, because his instrument sounds so great when it has enough room to breathe, and you know, an environment that resonates with what he's capable of doing, and his history in Ocean Way B, where we tracked it, a lot of the stuff that he did with Ry Cooder in those rooms, the sessions that I've done in that room, and just the time that I've spent in there, and just breathing in that room sounds good. So the sort of embarrassment of riches of the players that you were mentioning, and Mike Elizondo and Ben Montench and Fiona Apple, these people who most of the budget went on the players, and that was kind of the plan from the get-go, but it would have not been appropriate to not somehow capture that in an environment that let them, you know, that like the three-dimensional aspect of Heigh Ho, the sound of it, to me makes me feel like I'm back in that room, you know, with the music as it's being played, and it's a bit of a challenging way of record making, and I learned a lot while we were doing it. I've thought of it kind of like painting, and you sit and look at a painting that looks almost like a photograph, and think about the technique that goes into creating that three-dimensional effect, and the perspective and the colors, and light and all that stuff. It's really kind of shocking. I mean, it's kind of insane to think of how a plain medium like that can come to life. And record making is totally similar. It takes a lot more effort, I think, to make something sound realistic than, maybe the first thought is like put a mic up and stay out of the way of it, just capture it, because there are a lot of really fascinating sounding records that were made like that too. But to make a record this sort of with qualities that are like the ones we're talking about, they're almost like cinematic in a way. It requires a lot more technique, and in that regard, I really have to hand it to Greg Kohler, the engineer, who I met through John Bryan.
Okay.
And he and John had spent a lot of time in Ocean Way, so he knew the room really well. Obviously a gear fanatic, and we had some incredible equipment to work with at the time. And but like I said, the whole process for me was really quite a learning experience in record making in that regard. Break mirrors is something that I feel like a lot more people have access to, making a record like that.
Yeah.
Like fucked up sounds and layering and overdubbing on top of yourself and 30 tracks of vocals, just things that are in the spirit of a lot of the Beatles recordings and stuff, and those were all made at a time when that was breaking the rules. Now making a record that is sort of economical in its usage of instrumentation and live and natural sounding, to me, based on what I've heard, strikes me as kind of breaking the rules. Like, I don't hear a lot of people making records like that.
Yeah.
And so that's another part of why I think I find it so fascinating.
I know Rick Rubin's used you a lot, has kind of brushing shoulders with him and kind of watching him inspired you in any way?
I mean, working with him and everybody's sensibilities as a producer. I mean, something you said about when introducing the question about, like, it's always a bit of a mystery as to what role the producer plays in a project, and you nailed it. I mean, the sound of a record is usually thought of as coming from the producer, and I've been in so many situations when it has been from the artist or the engineer. I mean, there are there's a lot of brilliance in what guys like Rick do, and that is to identify what areas need somebody to step in and what areas need somebody to step away and just let something else shine. And Rick knows what engineer to hire for a record based on the artist and the band and the room, and there's definitely a lot of things that I have learned being a studio musician in regards to producing.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, the Fretboard Journal offices are not a good controlled recording environment, but let's hear another tune.
I was actually kind of digging it. There was like the pictures on the wall were playing along.
They were. And then I'm going to ask you about these things.
Okay. This is kind of an interesting tuning. I don't remember the point at which I came across it, but I know that it came from really enjoying this voicing of B flat that had the open D string as the third. There's something different about that, and I don't know if it comes through on the laptops and whatever people are listening to, but I don't know. Anyways, I like that open D, so I kept kind of trying to find ways of playing around in that position. But when you get to the B and E string, you kind of have to, you run out of fingers.
Yeah.
So I brought the B string down to B flat and the E string up to F, and so now there's this sort of or F-ish, there's this sort of like dulcimer kind of chorus effect going on with all the different voicings that you can do with the this is a song called Don't Tell Our Friends About Me.
The older I am, but the wiser I'm not. I felt ashamed of how angry I'd gone. I know I was not getting my message across. I know you can't stand me when that's how I talk. When I summon a duel or when I brandish a thought, I was wrong, turning honesty against you. Sure, some of them could use a good talk, but babe, don't tell all our friends about me. Please, baby, don't tell our friends about me. I can sleep on the couch if you want me to. I can be a good dog and just sit with you. Do whatever it is that you ask me to do. Do you forgive me and I'll forgive you? I know you got the beating, but I caught a few. Frankly, I don't know what else I can confess to you. Love used to make quarrel and spar sometimes, but babe, don't tell all our friends about me. Please, baby, don't tell our friends about me. I know I fucked up. 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 But please, baby, don't tell all our friends about me. You said you just needed some time to adjust. It's been 48 hours and 3 weeks and 2 months. Hummingbirds hum, worker bees buzz. You put too much confidence in the people you trust. All the enemies are friends that'll all tend to judge, while I write songs that'll help me deal with issues. Sure, some people may hear too much, but babe, they don't tell all our friends about us. No, mostly they just talk too much, but please, baby, don't tell all our friends about me. Please, baby, don't tell all our friends about me. I know I fucked up. 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 But please, baby, don't tell all our friends about me.
Lovely. Well, let's talk gear.
All right.
All right. I've been to your house. I know you have a lot of guitars and a lot of amps.
Yeah.
Well, let's start with the Barney Kessel. Talk about it.
It's a relatively new acquisition for me.
Okay.
I was at True Tone in Santa Monica, and Dave Jenkins came up, and I was just perusing the wall there with all the guitars on it, and Dave said, "You want to see something cool?" And usually when he says that, he brings down, some, flame top, 50s Les Paul, or just something that will probably end up in the hands of a dentist or a lawyer someday. And he brought this down and didn't tell me much about it, and I spent like an hour and a half just playing it. And when they were finally all ready to leave because it was well past closing hours, I said, "What is the deal with this guitar?" And he said, "We just got it. We haven't put it on the floor yet." And it was not an instrument that was as astronomically priced as the 50s Les Pauls.
Sure.
And it had been tuned down a whole step, and I'd been playing it in that tuning, and it was just really deep and had this amazing sort of conversation, quality with the hollow body and humbuckers and its playability. It sort of is one of those instruments that kind of talks back, to you and as you're playing it. I passed up an opportunity one time on an instrument like that, and never again.
What was that?
So that was a 70s Les Paul, a black Les Paul custom. That it's a great guitar.
Don't talk about it.
Nah. But yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with this guitar on the road, with the amps being as loud as they are, and the feedback, and that's something that is a constant learning experience too. Playing with when things like start taking off on stage, and trying to incorporate that into. Oh yeah, I meant to do that. Like getting used to reaching way down here for knobs and stuff. Playing like Strats and Tellys, everything is kind of nicely gettable.
Yeah.
But when you pick up a Gibson after having not played one for a long time, it's a little bit of feels like a big rig.
Yeah. You got the Cooter Caster.
Yeah. Those are that one was made by a guy named Mike Cornwall, who has a guitar repair truck business.
We've mentioned this guy in the past. Yeah.
It's pretty ingenious. He bought a Snap-on truck and built a guitar repair service in the back of it. And in LA, you have a lot of studios and people with private collections, and things sit for a long time in disrepair because to throw everything that's broken, and bring it over somewhere, you either can't afford to be without that much gear for that long, or it's just too daunting of a process. So the idea of somebody coming to you and addressing all that stuff is, I think, a winner. But he was my guitar tech when I was playing with Lucinda Williams, and we built this. Basically, it's obviously heavily inspired by the Cooter Caster, but the neck pickup is different. The neck pickup was something that was in a guitar that Val McCallum had and lent to me, and he didn't know what it was. Somebody had just thrown it in there, and it was one of those pickups that, and I don't know, there don't seem to be many mysteries left, but this was something that there wasn't a lot of information on, and I finally found it was on a single model of a hollow body Gaiatone guitar.
Yeah.
And they're still floating around, and the guitars themselves are not great instruments usually, so I don't have a lot of guilt of pulling the pickups out of them. But I found a few, and I really liked the transparency of that neck pickup, and aside from that, it's just a really playable guitar made from parts that
Mike found while we were on the road and put together, and he did the ferrules in the back by himself, and they're all kind of jagged and great. If you can get a shot of that, you don't see that very much anymore. But it's a really fun instrument to play. Telecaster neck, which I don't know why I prefer. I think I just kind of like the look of a Telecaster neck on a Strat body more than anything else. But these pickups also make for really great percussion. Like you get a tone out of each one of these.
And what is that bridge pickup?
It's from a Valco.
It's this. Okay.
Yeah. I put it in the Lawler housing because they don't have to deal with the apparatus and milling all that steel. Yeah. But I really like the sound of these two pickups out of phase with each other. But and I can give an example of that. Like so, here's just the neck pickup, and here's the middle position. It's kind of throaty, like a duck quacking or something. Yeah. And it's really fun to play slide in that position. But the problem with getting that is that these Valco pickups are made to be out of phase internally. Like there's two pickups in there. Yeah. And so usually if you have them out of phase with another pickup, only half the strings are out of phase. Okay. And we were calling around trying to figure out how to wire it to be in phase with itself. And everybody that had any knowledge of the pickup came back and just said it can't be done. And of course, Mike figured out how it could be done, and crossed some wires and made it so. And that's really the only modification that I do to this pickup. Otherwise, it's just finding kind of sweet spot placements. That's why the pick guard's all cut up, because we just sort of kept experimenting with where to put those pickups. But they're really responsive and great for slide, and it's an instrument that I constantly go back to.
I want to ask you about all of this, but we did get a question on our Facebook page from a guy named Andrew Newby who wanted to know, I knew this was going to come up, how the Film of Sound amp has factored into your rig. He also wanted to hear about what strings you use.
Heavily. Oh, well, the strings, I'm still kind of finding gauges for different instruments based on the weather and what songs I'm playing and stuff like that. But I use D'Addario strings, and their kind of library of different things that they make has been great for experimenting. Yeah. Flat wounds on this particular guitar. I have another sort of Cootercaster inspired guitar that I use round wounds on, and it just seems to change, like as the months go by. The projector amps were something that I had turned a friend of mine on to these Guyatone pickups, and as a form of repayment, he introduced me to a fellow by the name of Austin Hooks, who's here with us today. Yep. Austin was doing building these amps out of Bell & Howell foam projectors, and he was extensively going through them and recapping them and rebuilding the amplifier, but not doing what a lot of people do when they tool with projectors and turning radios into amps and stuff. And he left a lot of things in there, and what he chose to leave in there really had a lot to do with what I think is so special about those amps. But he and I have had a really awesome journey of throwing ideas at the wall and seeing what sticks in regards to what can be done with those amps, and putting certain tubes in positions, and now working on he's building cabinets as well, and so finding speakers that pair well. I mean, it's like a tasting in a way, and it's very culinary, the way that he's gone about it. but they're really beautiful. And on a stage when there's like a union crew, it's fascinating. Like without fail, they go straight for the amp and go, I used to work one of those in high school. Yeah, I've got plenty of terrible memories attached to that box. I didn't think I'd ever see one of those. I got one lying around the garage. Maybe I should fire it up. He uses the projector lens as the jewel lamp.
Okay.
And puts a couple of speaker taps. I mean, I stay blissfully unaware of a lot of what goes into it, but it's been, like I said, it's been an awesome adventure, and one that has. The first ones that I ever heard were like some of the best amps, the most clear, balanced. They had bite, but they didn't peter out after the initial bite like a lot of guitar amps do. And for slide, that sustain, it means everything. Like it's a different form of playing guitar because there's so much feel in it and sort of auditory tuning going on, and if the amp isn't giving you all the information, then it's really hard to play slide.
Yeah.
And I play a lot of slide, so it was just a beautiful amp for slide guitar, and we've had a lot of fun building now like reverb tanks. He started building reverbs and vibratos, and just has one of those minds for what else is possible.
Yeah.
That I think is in the tradition of great gear and art and everything. So
before everybody runs out to Goodwill, not all Filmo sounds are created equal.
No,
there are certain models that work for this.
Yeah. And we're gonna pan away from the specifics so that those models don't continue to skyrocket in prices. But a lot, he's also kept it very homegrown in terms of who he builds amps for, and it's very one-to-one friend of the family kind of thing, and they're starting to grow in numbers, but still, the waiting list is long enough that I don't know if everybody who sets out to try to find one will end up getting them, because there's just a limited resource of those projectors floating around on Craigslist and stuff.
What did you bring here today?
This is a Tweed Super. It's a 54 Super that Retro Fret got in, and the time difference with when they send out the email for like the new stuff that just arrived. Yeah, like it hits me in California at like 4 a.m. So I was up and got the email and was perusing and saw this amp, and it had been retweeted, and so it was affordable on a musician's budget. And I'd heard a few supers that I just love, but I'd never heard a wide panel before, and kind of took a chance, and I got it, and it was one of those situations where I had just moved, so I wasn't familiar with the sound of the room that I was in yet, the house. And I got it, I put it in, and I said, I think it's good. I think it's really good. And I brought it over to Austin, and he did some work on it. And after getting it back, then I was like, okay, this is going to be a main part of the rig from now on. It's just sort of right. It has a lot of compression at a low volume, and it's really fun to play. And the ammo can is
an ammo can.
Well, it's an ammo can, among other things.
Yeah.
Joanne at Victoria Amps, outside of Chicago, had built this as kind of a experiment, and she put like a black face reverb circuit with a brown face vibrato circuit together in something that you plug into like a pedal, and it just goes in before the input on the amp, and it sounds beautiful. And I love playing with reverb, and some of my favorite amps don't have reverb, so it's nice to have a spring reverb option. It's nice to be able to, on some of those outdoor festival stages that we all know and love, when they wobble with the kick drum, it sets the reverb springs off. So if you just get a a super long RCA cable, you can isolate the tank and still, you know, get by. And it just has a really beautiful sounding vibrato. And she sent me home with one, and I called back and said, I've been using it on everything. You know, can you make me a backup so I can tour with one? And she did, and I've just had some interesting experiences going through customs with an ammo can.
I bet.
And then when they open it up and you have to explain, you know, what it is. Sometimes if there's a language barrier, radio works instead of, you know, it's from the circuit of a black mid '60s. I went to Cuba for a record and brought it down there.
How'd that go over?
It was a scary few minutes in the airport. Everybody in customs, they're like younger than me, and they're in uniforms, and they've got machine guns, and they're sweet as can be. They're but it's just you're in a very foreign environment, and the language barrier definitely came into effect, and somebody came over and saw the inputs where the plugs go and ushered me along. But
remind me, what session was that?
I was doing a session with Don Was.
Okay.
For an artist by the name of Zucchero.
Okay.
And he made like a version of some of his greatest hits in the form of like a Cuban record, a Cuban version. And of course now you can't have Cuban music without Tex-Mex slide guitar.
Sure.
So everybody was Cuban there except for Don and I, and Zucchero is Italian. And it was just a total treat. I mean, to play with those guys, the stuff that goes on in between takes at those sessions is like life affirming. Yeah, it was really a profound session and trip, just experience for me. It had a lot of impact on my record as well, because the sound of there are really two main studios there, and the sound of the rooms there. Egram, where a lot of the Buena Vista stuff was recorded, and the record that Rye made with Manuel Gavan. The sound of that room, on YouTube you can find videos of upright bass and conga in there, and the room cuts through. It's just, you can hear it without any sort of that work that we were talking about going into presenting that on a record. It's just so gorgeous and large, but doesn't kind of doesn't take off like being in like a theater or an arena or something. It's not swampy. It's just beautiful. I don't know. There's something about being in a great sounding room that I've really come to appreciate.
Were you able to talk to Rye before you took that trip and get some advice?
You know, it was one of the few times that I've had a chance to speak with him, and I was in True Tone the day before going down there, and Rye was there, and I just thought to myself, like, this would be such a missed opportunity, and you know, I don't like to go up to people and, you know, bug them, but in this case I did. And I said, I'm going down there, do you have any tips for me, you know, and what did you do about gear? And he said, well, now listen, you know, where are you staying, you know? And I told him the hotel. He said, okay, well, make sure you get on the 6th floor, because that's the business level. That's where all the good shit is, you know. Stay on this side of the hotel, otherwise you won't get any sleep, because, you know, the thoroughfare goes, you know, around the front of it. So he had clearly, you know, mapped it out and figured out what to do, and had some pointers on what happens inevitably to gear down there with the power, and how things sound. And you rent a lot of equipment from Canada, and the power discrepancy between, you know, the voltage makes things sound pretty different. So I brought a Variac, and but it was fun. We spent like maybe 15 or 20 minutes just kind of giving me the rundown on, you know, what to eat and what not to eat. Yeah, it was a really fun experience.
Yeah, So on the new record, what were the other main instruments that you used?
I used a Telecaster that is on loan from Jackson Brown.
Okay.
A 52 Blackguard that.
That we featured in the magazine.
That's
I believe.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. I've been in love with the Telecaster since hearing guys like Ted Green and Bill Frisell and Roy Buchanan. Just the immediacy of how that instrument can speak in how many different languages, musical languages. It's kind of a perfect guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And when you find a Telecaster that has sort of like a nice rounded, they're all pretty. It's like fruit. I mean, like when you find one that's ripe, it's kind of easy for it to become a go-to instrument,
mm-hmm.
and that one has definitely become a go-to guitar. I was borrowing a really beautiful little gut string guitar that was made in the late 1800s that Stuart Johnson, the drummer, had found on a tour in Europe in a clothing store, and it was sitting up on the wall like some of these ukuleles, and he said, what's the story with that guitar? And it belonged to the storekeeper, and he said, would you consider selling it? And somehow he got this guitar, and he's good at picking out great instruments, Stuart, like guitars, drums,
mm-hmm.
and he knew he had something special, and he it was a nice long loan that he let me have on that guitar as well, and that I used on a song called "Cry to Laugh,"
mm-hmm.
and "Half Asleep." Just all the nylon stuff is this really great little guitar that records well. The back has a bit of an arch to it, so it projects nicely for a nylon string. Used the projector amps almost exclusively, and had a really great setup. At Ocean Way, there's a sort of side room, and it's large by most side room
mm-hmm.
standards. They did all of the Hanna-Barbera, the Looney Tunes orchestral stuff just solely in that room.
Yeah.
And that entire room was dedicated to one of the guitar amps. So we were able to get this massive sound from the guitar, and simultaneously a massive sound, if we needed it, from the drums.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody was in the room together with the drums. There was an amp in there as well, but a little quieter, and bass was in there as well, if I remember correctly. But that was a big part of the guitar tones too, just having that kind of freedom of space to play
mm-hmm.
with, for sure.
You also played that short tour with Fiona Apple, and I was blown away that you could command a stage with basically just a tipple, which one's playing.
It's a mighty instrument. Yeah. Also the venues that we played were geared towards a lot of acoustic music,
sure.
Orchestral stuff, which is a blast to be in that kind of environment. But yeah, since getting a tipple, I've used it on just about everything. It just has this a way of not impeding on any other instruments going on. I mean, like it interacts with cymbals, it interacts with guitars, bass, voice. It's just this kind of, it's like the world's saddest sounding mandolin.
Mm-hmm. And how are you tuning it?
I think I'm tuning it like a second fret capo on a guitar.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess low to high, E, A, C sharp, F sharp.
Mm.
Is that right?
Ish. Yeah.
E, yeah, ish.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. And I think that's lower than the standard tipple tunings. I have one that I keep in standard, but this Sterling that I found that has a little more body to it seems to speak in that lower tuning better.
All right. Well, I know you want to save your voice. You got. Can you do one more tune?
Yeah, I would
All
love
right.
to. So I'll play that one, "Cry to Laugh," that I did on the nylon string on the record, and see what it sounds like.
All right.
On this. This one has a lot of really fun chord voicings in it. I'm a huge fan of Randy Newman's piano playing,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of his moves. Where if you can see it on a keyboard, you realize like how little the change from one note, internally in a chord, kind of going back and forth and doing the sort of accidental and then bringing it back into the chord, just how big of a sound that
Mm-hmm.
is. I really like the way that translates to guitar. So there are some Randy Newman moves.
On the hunt to feed all my little pains, broke a branch and scared away the game. Still tracking this big buck through the rain. I try, but I'll cry aloud. Well, I can't tell when I'm being tricked. But ain't it looking like the odds are being fixed? Oh, to be the prime suspect in all of this, I'll try, but I'll cry to laugh. I'll try believing that I could be your lead man. You just wanna do as you always have done, but you can't. Did I ever really need your help to tell me something I already know about myself? Or was this a joke that only time could tell? I'll cry whenever I try to laugh. I tried believing that I could be your lead man. You just wanna do as you always have done, but you can't. You woke me up just as my dreams begun. I don't believe that I'm the only one who's ever seen it so beautifully undone. Who tries but he cries to laugh. Still trying, but he cries to laugh. Oh, I'll try, but I'll cry to laugh.
Thank you so much, Blake. This was
Total
a lot of
pleasure to
fun.
be here. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks so much.